So it doesn't make sense. And it has absolutely 150% been weaponized the whole time. I would love to see what happened if this had not been a presidential election year. And it's like, this is people's health that you're messing with. You cannot use this for politics. It's crazy. We don't know. We're not getting information. When we get information, we don't know if it's trustworthy. And it's like, it has flabbergasted me from the beginning. And, you know, when people were saying election infection, I had to giggle because I'm like, it's true. It really was. And I'm not saying that COVID's not real, but I'm saying if you have any question in your mind whether or not that has been used to influence all of us and the electoral decisions in the last year, you are being willfully blind.
Can I pause for a second and just note that we got Brian on here who's getting Congressman Massey on, and our typical lineup includes like homeless people that believe in Bigfoot.
Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show, your source for common sense politics on the We Are Libertarians Network. The Brian Nichols Show is the fastest growing liberty podcast that brings together people from all means of political thought as we seek to have meaningful conversations about the issues you care about. At the Brian Nichols Show, our goal is to leave the audience educated, enlightened, and informed. And now your host, Brian Nichols.
Happy Sunday there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of our Sunday Candidate Highlight Series. And today we are joined not by a libertarian running for office, but rather a libertarian who has won. And that is one Trisha Butler. She is joining the program, and she is the council member for the 12th Ward down in Clarksville, Tennessee. So Trisha joins the program to help us learn how libertarians can be human, reach people on a human-to-human basis, entering conversations that they're already having and meeting people where they're at. She has the skins on the wall. She has won her office, and now she can help get policy into action, folks. This is an opportunity to learn on how it's done. So that being said, onto the show. All right, and with that, joining us on the Brian Nichols program, Trisha Butler. Thank you so much for joining the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Trisha, from Clarksville, Tennessee, you are the 12th Ward council person and elephant in the room. Well, you're not an elephant. You're a libertarian, a porcupine. And that's something that we try to raise up here at the program, the successes. And hey, there you go. That's right. And we're on the video version of the program, folks. So this is usually airing on Sundays. And now folks can get to see the interview as well. So let's start off here, Trisha. We like to tout not just libertarian candidates on the Sunday Highlight Series, but we also like to tout, in this case, some libertarian success stories. Now, I know you were saying tongue-in-cheek that we haven't had too many policy successes yet from a standpoint of getting stuff into action, but I dare say you're changing the conversation. So, Trisha Butler, let's start off introducing yourself to the program and what got you into this world of libertarian politics.
Oh, man. All right. So I'm Trisha Butler. I do serve Ward 12 in Clarksville, Tennessee. Clarksville, Tennessee is the 5th biggest city in Tennessee. Most people don't realize that. I also happen to be in the biggest ward because we're about to redistrict. So I have around 20,000 constituents. What brought me into libertarianism? I would have to say, well, I had a friend who taught me about libertarianism during my mid-tour leave, my first tour from Iraq. And she was really big into Bob Barr and stuff like that. So she got me interested way back when, but I finally bit the bullet and registered as a libertarian. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time, so I have my card. I'm really proud of it. In 2016, because I was like, we're not doing this Trump thing. No, we're not. So.
Yeah, the Trump thing, I think it woke a lot of people up in terms of wanting to find something different. They were like, oh, especially if you're in the GOP, and that's where originally I came from, was I was in the Rand Paul camp. I was thinking, oh, Ron Paul's son, this just makes as a natural sense the progression. Also, I got to see him, standing up and doing a filibuster about how it's not cool to go ahead and just, unilaterally drone American citizens without, them being, I guess, found to be an actual criminal. Hey, timeout. Should we even be having this conversation about droning U.S. citizens? Timeout. This is a weird conversation to be having. So that was my approach. And then you see Donald Trump, and to paraphrase John Mulaney, horse in the hospital. Nobody knew what the heck was going on. And people just kind of stood back and let him really in the GOP primaries, steamroll over everybody. And then the narrative changed. So I was looking for a home, and I think that's where a lot of folks in the Libertarian Party, they did gravitate, especially in 2016, away from what was presented as the bad option from the right, but also a bad option from the left. And one of the things I think we've been having some success in is reaching people where they're at on particular issues that aren't overtly left or right. Okay, I love that you love that, because that's something that we've been focusing on the program, is meeting people on the things that matter to them. I don't care about us, like what we care about, because at the end of the day, they're not going to really care too much either. They want to make sure that their issues are being addressed. So let's talk about the friends on the left. What have you found to be some of the number one issues that are on the top of their radar here as we are in 2021?
So obviously a lot of the policing the police and things like that. I'm on the same side as my friend, and I do have friends on the left. The girl that sits right next to you in city council is a outspoken progressive, and we agree on we don't agree on most things, but we get along really well. So, of course, the police, and we agree on cannabis issues, stuff like that. So it's really a lot more, as long as we're focusing on what we agree on instead of what we disagree on. Especially at a local level, there's a lot more,
Yeah. Oh, well, and that's, I think, what people are looking for. I was actually just having this conversation with a good friend, and he's going to be on the program in a little bit, friend Max Goelker. And, we approach things a little differently in terms of, I look at, trying to build more coalitions and collaborate with people on issues that we can, I would say, actually accomplish. And I find that policy is infinitely more consequential than rhetoric. I mean, I'm so tired of the mentality that we have to be more focused on who's saying what versus who's actually doing stuff and accomplishing things. And I'm a sales executive by trade. And one of the things that I like to do is help with solving the reality gap. Where are you right now? And where are we going to end up? And as we, in the local level, especially local level, start to answer those questions that people are currently asking, and then once the policy is in place, regardless if it's a Republican, a Democrat, or in this case, a Libertarian that passes it, as it starts to have a positive success and it starts to show those people the value of the policy, that's when we can say, hey, by the way, that happened to be a libertarian policy. How about that?
We thought of that. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, go ahead.
That was another thing that I was in big agreement with a lot of the people that would be considered left. And honestly, when I sit up on city council, I'm not really looking at affiliation, like seriously. But one of the big things that I did have in common with a lot of the Democrat leaders around here was the short-term rentals. I tried to repeal the short-term rentals ordinance. So
what was so when you're talking to the friends on the left and they're bringing up these issues, I think part of the problem I've found is that they look to government to be the ultimate, and in this case, the judge, jury, executioner of any policy prescription that's put out there. So how can we maybe help change that conversation so that we're pre-framing almost the context versus saying government's going to be the solution and the person, or in this case, the organization solving the problem, and rather changing it to start looking at more market-based solutions that they would actually entertain?
What's funny? I can't really, a lot of the left leading people that I work with on city council, they actually agree that the government, I live in an area where everybody's kind of upset with the local government right now. So I don't run into that as much as when we start talking about national or state stuff, that's when it comes up. But I really don't have that problem in the local level yet.
Yeah. So let's talk about local level. So obviously in Clarksville, I'm sure the lockdowns have impacted your area despite being a red. No?
And again, this might just be me. I feel like we've been pretty good about that kind of stuff. As far as lockdown, we've been allowed to leave our house since I want to say May of last year. It lasted like a month, the whole shutdown.
Wow.
However, I make a conscious decision to I've been making the conscious decision to kind of stay out of public so much. But I was going last November, I was going to events that had 250 people. No one was wearing a mask. So this is the same thing. People were like, it's such a bad it's so bad. And I'm like, I feel like we have been protected from that here in Clarksville to some extent.
I think the context, I mean, so number one, this just speaks to why federalism is so important, because I live in Philadelphia, and I mean, still we have restrictions on restaurants here in terms of what you're able to do. And I still can't believe it sometimes. Like, I will be driving home. I was literally driving home from the office today, and I saw a guy on his bicycle wearing a mask without wearing a helmet. What are we doing?
In the car. Everybody in Clarksville has their mask on alone in their car. And I'm like, I just don't get it.
And I don't get it.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get it. And I think maybe we're seeing more and more, there's almost two Americas, which I don't like that we're getting to this point, but there's the folks who are like, I just don't get this approach. Like, what? And it's more so of like a top-down approach. Like, why are we looking at the federal government to say this needs to be the policy, especially when we look to places like where you are in Tennessee or states like Texas and Florida, who are doing the exact opposite policy that's being promoted by the federal government, and they're having infinitely more successful results?
I don't even have anything to add to that, because I've been watching in Texas, because, you know, something will come out on the news and it's Texas is lifting all their, wait till you see the spike. And then, you know, a couple weeks later, you're still like, oh, where's the spike, guys? And I don't pretend to understand how COVID works. I never have. But the one thing that I said from the beginning, I'm going to do what makes sense in my head. So that's why when I go certain places like gas stations, for instance, someone's always breathing down your neck in a gas station. I wear a mask in a gas station. So I do what makes sense. But it's just, it doesn't make sense. And it has absolutely 150% been weaponized the whole time. I would love to see what happened if this had not been a presidential election year. And it's like, this is people's health that you're messing with. You cannot use this for politics. It's crazy. We don't know. We're not getting information. When we get information, we don't know if it's trustworthy. And it's like, it has flabbergasted me from the beginning. And, you know, when people were saying election infection, I had to giggle, because I'm like, it's true. It really was. And I'm not saying that COVID's not real, but I'm saying if you have any question in your mind whether or not that has been used to influence all of us and the electoral decisions in the last year, you are being willfully blind.
Yeah, well, Bill Maher, who, I mean, he's said a bajillion times before that he's libertarian-ish of some sorts, but he's kind of making some libertarian spidey senses tingle, because he just went across his channel there talking about the absolute insanity, and how when you look at the narrative of what COVID was supposed to be versus what actually happened, what did COVID actually do? And here's the dirty, rotten secret that people don't really want to address, is that if you are under the age of 50, you're relatively going to be okay. Now, oh my goodness, folks, yes, we know for certain there are folks who are going to get sick that are under the age of 50. That's not what we're saying. But what the point is that you cannot just arbitrarily lock down society indefinitely. And we've seen this with Dr. Fauci, but also when the data just isn't backing up that narrative.
Well, we're not looking at the data. And that's the whole problem that I have. It's never been about facts and data. It's always been about control, in my opinion. Like, even when they were telling us not to wear masks in the beginning, I truthfully believe that the reason that they told us in the very, very beginning not to worry about masks, it wasn't just about the fact that they didn't have enough healthcare workers. I think it was because they were trying to keep us from freaking out. And then when it behooved them to do so, then they made a mask mandate, you know. And that is the biggest problem, is that there is no truth. And how are we as citizens supposed to make the best decisions for us and our family if we cannot go anywhere to find truth, because it's all partisan and it's all about your side winning?
Yes, well, and that's what happens when the conversation is weaponized, right? If you can't enter into a conversation in good faith, and we saw this, if you're not even allowing dissenting views to enter into the conversation, then people, they should be very skeptical of what it is that you're promoting as your truth, your version of the absolute guaranteed objective reality. And this is, I think, very helpful for libertarians across the board, is that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Trish, is that we've seen as more and more folks have watched what has happened as government has started to go through in its response to the COVID lockdowns, and then folks realizing how wrong the government has been in so many different areas that people, I think, are becoming more inherently skeptical of government just across the board.
I would agree. I can't really add like a whole lot to that. I would absolutely agree. I think that you can see that a little bit with the passports. And again, I feel like I live kind of in a sheltered area. I immediately made it, just so happened that when the passport thing dropped, I put my 2 cents about that during a city council meeting, kind of at the end, and basically I said, hey, listen, you've been saying this together from the beginning. Don't start separating us by our vaccination status now, and again, sheltered, but I haven't really heard like a whole lot more about that coming down anywhere around here. So,
well, and I guess it's making a difference. So let's look at maybe something that's going to impact the future, and that's from an educational standpoint. School choice has been just running rampant. I've had Corey DeAngels in the program talking about the merits of school choice and him trying to get more states to start funding students, not institutions. So, Trisha, has there been a conversation of school choice, especially during an era of COVID lockdowns where students are being forced to sit home from school?
So let me explain a couple of things. First of all, in Clarksville, our county handles schools. So I don't have any kind of vote on what goes on with schools. However, I have 4 children and 3 of them are school age. One will be starting kindergarten in the fall. So this is something that is important to me. It's been kind of cool. Again, here we had the option whether to send kids to school or not. And when you start talking about school option, we were forced into this situation by COVID. Well, by the government with COVID. But we ended up finding out that we have at least one child that does infinitely better being schooled at home. And we have another child, well, actually 2, our two boys, they needed to go back to school. So that's been kind of neat. But I think that, to me, that really highlights the fact that we need to be doing what's good for our kids, and not even family by family, by individual. We're a party of individuals, right? So even your individual kids matter. So for us, we have serious overcrowding in schools. And one of the things that happened was they ended up opening the cyber school. It's like indefinite now. That is an option, which is really good around here because we have a lot of military kids. So again, I feel like a spoiled brat, but I feel like it has worked better for us. Tennessee tends to be a give out vouchers type of state anyway. But this is something that I listen to a lot of clubhouses about, just because I find it interesting. And if I should ever go up toward a state level, it's something that I would have to at least know what's been going on for the past few years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Trisha, what you're saying is, I'm going to put my Kathy Newman hat on. So what you're saying is that we're going to have you on again in the future for the Sunday Candidate Highlight Series for a potential state run. Okay, noted. We're going to put that down here in the notes. Also, one thing that I do like to hear, and I like to, obviously have some fun here, but one thing that you're talking about specifically with school choice, and we're seeing this across the board, is people have just started to realize that government didn't have the answers. And this is such a great opportunity for us to talk about spontaneous order, right? Now, we don't have to call it spontaneous order, but we can call it what? Pandemic pods? Was that what the term was? Where just spontaneously across the United States, parents started to work together, going on Facebook groups and building little communities, hiring teachers on their own to teach their kids. And my libertarian self was just beaming from ear to ear, because nobody 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a year ago could have even imagined this being the reality. And yet here we are. It just pops out of nowhere. And that just speaks to the value that, hey, government doesn't always have to have the answers. And actually, government usually doesn't have the answers. And who ends up having the answers? The free market.
Yep. And the government, I love that, the way everyone always says, I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be a solution. I'm just saying the government is never the best at finding a solution. And I do think that we do better with that. And the pod system is a really good example of that. I agree.
So we talked about what we do well, because we can talk about what we do well all day long. But my show is focused on sales. And part about sales is looking at the things that maybe we don't do well and we can focus on getting better at. So, Trisha, You get an open platform here to talk to libertarians directly. What can we do better to reach more people, as you like to do? And I said, meet them where they're at.
I always use that, and it's like it's an old Christian thing, I guess, from growing up Christian. Meet people where they're at, and so I do really like that what you say. Another one of my favorite things to say is, brush your teeth and put on a blazer. Like, it's not that difficult. We like to, as libertarians, we're smart, we're philosophers. I get that. I happen to be a libertarian that doesn't read a lot of books and isn't one of the smart philosophers. So I am trying to bridge that gap between being smart philosopher guy and normie, because, when I decided to run for office, I was a stay-at-home mom. Like, and I'm not trying to, okay, I get it, Rothbard and Mises and Ayn Rand, it's all really great, but I have 4 children running around my feet, and I'm not going to sit down and read a book right now. So, and it's extremely important, and I say this a lot. Our current vice chair, my very first state convention, he had done a speech, and he said, we have these important parts. We have leaders, we have candidates, we have the philosophers, and we have the activists. And I think right now what we need to do is work together within those capacities on each other's strengths. Like, one of the biggest problems that we have is, instead of finding a campaign, instead of finding a race that is a winnable, viable race, all right, which mine was in the beginning, toward the end it kind of wasn't. But when we find a winnable, viable race, find a candidate for that race. Instead, it's like whoever stands up and says, "Hey, I'll do it," then we're like, "Yeah." And a lot of times you have to have skills to interact with the community. Something that libertarians do not love, because they consider this unprincipled, is that when you run a campaign, it's all about branding. You said this is about sales, right? It's all about campaigns are about name recognition and branding, So if we have someone who's just extremely principled but cannot articulate that in words that a normie could understand, these are the places then they get caught up, and they get on these tangents, wild tangents. And the voters want to know, you said this earlier in the show too, what can you do for me? And that is why meeting them where they're at matters, So yes, I would knock a door and someone would say, "Well, where do you stand on abortion?" And I'm like, this is a city level race. I'm never going to vote on that. And they're like, "Yeah, but it's, this, it's my litmus test." And it's like, all right, fine. You even have to find ways to tell them the answer to that question while not shutting them down completely. And us, we like to be contrarians. And when you're running campaigns, you cannot be like, it's all about branding. And keeping your mouth shut sometimes doesn't mean that you're not principled. Because I'll tell you what, if anyone ever asked me, I told them the truth, as softly as possible sometimes.
Yeah, well, silence can never be misquoted, and you can never have to be in a situation to take something back that you didn't say. So, and I see this too in this, I guess this is just in the greater liberty unity world. So here, peek behind the curtain, folks. We're recording this episode here on Tuesday the 30th, and tonight I'm going to be joining Reed Coverdale. So folks, as this is airing on Sunday's episode, make sure you go ahead and check out that episode with Reed. But we're talking about, and are going to be talking about tonight, how we can bring the idea of meeting people where they're at, selling liberty, but helping bridge the liberty unity gap, where we currently are focused too much on the issues we think that matter, and instead, again, meeting people where they're at, solving their problems, and being good listeners, and making sure that people feel like, oh, these libertarians actually care. And I'm sorry, I've never really found somebody to enter into a great conversation just from being a smartass or a contrarian, to your point. It never really seems to work out too well. People seem to resonate more when you come across as somebody genuinely caring, understanding, and empathetic. And yes, I know empathy is something we don't want to focus on entirely, but guess what? People want to feel cared for. So there's a reason that we can have a lot of room to grow. And that's why I want to make sure we had you on the show, Trisha, because you're showing how we can accomplish these wins across the board. Now, I'm going to look at your elected role here as an absolute win, because now you're reaching more people, and it's going to give you more of a chance to get some policy. So what's some policy actions that you're looking to hopefully get moving into action as we move forward here through 2021?
So let me tell you a little something that I have learned in my first 3/4 months in office. Um, politics is very much a game, and it's a lot dirtier than you could even imagine when you're looking at it from the outside. There are people that you want to work with that will vote against something that they agree with just to spite you. So I am trying to navigate that. I jumped right into this and fulfilled all of the things that I had said that I was going to try to accomplish when I was campaigning. So I put forward a cannabis deregulation resolution that was kicked down. We did the Second Amendment sanctuary city that was actually passed. And then, like I was saying, I tried to repeal the short-term rentals, and that passed first reading and then failed the second reading. So politics is very much a game, and I'm going to have to work on my diplomacy and stuff. So see, even I have a good idea as a libertarian about diplomacy and campaigns, but now that I'm in the office, it's learning. So one of the things that I've kind of have done is, since we're getting ready to do budgets and stuff, I'm going to simmer down on some of the legislation. But the things that I put in are already things that the people told me to put in. So what happens is, even if it fails, I get to come back and say, you're failing your constituents. They asked me to put this forward. You told them no, and so it's about accountability and transparency in that. And if that is all my failures accomplished, that is good enough for me. But as far as getting some legislation to actually work out, I am trying to build those relationships and stuff so that we can do that futuristically. But I'm always open to ideas. I try to tell my constituency that. I'm like, what do you want me to do? I'm up here. I'm representing. Now tell me what to do,
Well, it's great because you get to talk to the people who are actually experiencing the policy firsthand. And and as we wrap up the show, Trish, I think this is a great way to segue to the end. And we talked about this beforehand. What do people need to see that we're not robots? They need to see libertarians as humans. So this is the challenge. We need to make libertarians human again, okay? Because otherwise, people are not going to be paying attention to us. We're just going to be the 14, page of text on Facebook that they're going to go ahead and scroll right past. And that's who we've been. If we are going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, we're only going to get the same results.
Well, you sound like a populist. And I'm like,
oh, goodness. I know.
I'm a normal person. Libertarians are normal people. We literally, like, the bulk majority of us, the loud ones. Yes. People don't understand that the loud people in the Libertarian Party are not the base. Like, a lot of people around are just libertarian by nature. I was one of those people. Ron Paul just told me what libertarian meant, So especially me around here with veterans, we all just want to be left the hell alone. I don't know if I can say hell, sorry.
You can. No, that's good. Yeah.
But yeah, so just, and like I said, I get yelled at. You're just a populist. Well, I ran on, I'm here for the people. You deserve to have the power back. And, I care. It's funny that you were talking about empathy and saying that. I wrote "I care" on all my door hangers when I put them out, because that's all I need. Look, left, right, libertarian, it doesn't matter. I'm your representative. Reach out to me anytime, and I'm going to listen to you. And I think that it's like the softer side of Sears, the Libertarian Party. We just need to be exactly what we are and take situations, and the libertarian spin on a situation is, relatively organic. It's something that most people can deal with. Even my hyper left friends, I give them an example and they're like, yeah, I don't really agree with that, but that makes sense, actually. You know what I mean? So, and the one thing, and this is super cool, the one thing that people always say is, even if I don't agree with you, you're consistent. So as long as we're saying the same things, no matter what, we can't be letting our emotions or our personal stances get in the way of that, like, the liberty and the freedom of, yeah, even if I don't agree with you, you get to do that. It's your inherent human right.
Yep. And honestly, this is the type of conversation. I've been saying this more and more frequently because we've been having some really good conversations in the program lately, but this is the conversation that people care about. People don't care about the split of the Libertarian Party. People don't care about which strategy worked in the 90s versus today. Like, let's talk about 2021 and what just happened, like, to all of us, with an entire, like, society that was shut down arbitrarily for, in some cases, still happening. I mean, look at Canada. Like, oh my God, Ontario, they're arresting 12-year-olds for being out on their skateboards. What's happening? And I think we sometimes, and I think it was actually Dave Smith was focusing on this, our moral outrage. We only have so much moral outrage that we can go ahead and have expended every single day. And when we're expending the moral outrage in areas that are completely just wastes of time, like, what are we doing? Are we spinning our wheels trying to focus on being right? Or are we spinning our wheels trying to actually get people into our movement, change people's hearts and minds? Trisha Butler, that's what you've been doing down in Clarksville, Tennessee. So with that being said, I want you to make sure we can go ahead, point folks your way, give us plugs, show plugs, all that kind of fun stuff, and where they can go ahead and support all that you're going to be doing here as maybe state elections come down the road.
Stop it. So I actually have 3 more years, and I've already said I'm not going to run in 2 years. I want to give my constituents what they elected me for, and that was 4 years. My campaign page is still up. You can still donate there. It's trishabutler.com. I swear eventually I'm going to update that page. I can be found on, all the regulars, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff at Trisha Butler TN, which is down there, correct? And you can always reach out to me. Facebook, all of my information is public knowledge. I'm not going to put my telephone number out here, but if you want it, it's pretty easy to find. So yeah, get a hold
Let's
of me.
not be weird, folks. Come on, don't be weird. If we want to get in touch with Trisha, we'll include the show notes here with all the links, so it's easier for folks to go ahead and find you that way. No phone numbers to be had. But Trisha, thank you, and I say this to every single candidate who is out there running, and now I can say it to a candidate who not only ran, but won. Thank you for running, and thank you for all you're going to be doing helping promote liberty going forward in Clarksville, Tennessee. Trisha Butler, thank you for joining the program.
Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, folks, that's going to wrap up my conversation with Trisha Butler. Thank you so much, Trisha, for fighting the good fight, not only running for office, but winning elected office as a libertarian. Folks, if you enjoyed today's episode, well, do me a favor. Number one, make sure you go ahead and share today's episode, especially if you are in the greater Clarksville, Tennessee area, or if you're just in general a fun-loving libertarian who wants to go ahead and raise the word. Yes, there are libertarians out there who are winning elections and making things better. Let's tell that story. And let's tell Trisha's story. So, folks, when you go ahead and share today's episode, make sure you tag Trisha. I'll include her social media in the show notes, and give yours truly here a tag as well at B Nichols Liberty, Twitter, Facebook, Minds.com, and Parler.com. Also, folks, if you had not had the chance yet, head over to Apple Podcasts, give us that 5-star rating and review. And if you're a longtime audio listener, yes, there is a new video version of the program. Head over to YouTube, click the link in the show notes, hit that subscribe button, number one. Number two, hit the magic little bell icon. It's probably right if you're looking at the video version, like right about here or so, so you're not missing a single episode. And yes, we're airing 4 times a week here, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, traditionally on the podcast version. For YouTube, though, you get to go ahead and catch the program before everyone else. That's right. Every Sunday night, Sunday night. I had to get the days right. Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night, folks, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can tune in on the YouTube and catch the program before anyone else. And actually, coming up here tonight, we are going to be joined once again by good friend of the show, Max Goelker. Now, Max is an economist, and he's been on the program before talking about a variety of things, from the Green New Deal to Joe Biden's economic policies and all that in between. But tonight, he's going to be joining the program, and we're discussing, number one, the messaging as it pertains to the lockdowns. Did libertarians maybe go a little too far and not have the proper messaging? I say I don't think so. I think actually maybe we should have gone much further. Max says maybe we've gone a little too far. So make sure, if you've not had the chance yet, to hit that subscribe button so you're not missing tonight's conversation airing on YouTube. But for you longtime audio listener, you will get that amazing podcast episode hitting. It's going to be one of those days, folks, hitting your podcast catcher there on Monday morning. So we're going to make it here, folks. With that being said, one last ask. Patreon, if you've not had the chance yet, head over to our Patreon and give us a subscribe over there. You can be a supporting member of the program as an entry-level sales executive here at The Brian Nichols Show, and you can first get one of these awesome Don't Hurt People and Don't Take People's Stuff bumper stickers. Every single Patreon subscriber will get one of those bumper stickers, and then a slew of other options as you enter in. So number one, if you want to be an entry-level sales, as I mentioned, not only do you get the chance to get that $5 per month sales, but also as you head over to the Patreon and you hit the entry-level sales, you also get the chance to enter into a mastermind group with yours truly and a bunch of other awesome guests when that time comes. And of course, you'll be joined up with amazing folks in our Facebook group as well. And also, you can go ahead and become an account executive at $10 a month, get one-on-ones with yours truly and a bunch of other neat little perks there behind the scenes. And at the same point in time, helping grow the Brian Nichols Show, helping reach more people and leaving folks, yes, educated, enlightened, and informed. So folks, thank you so much for joining us here on today's special Sunday Candidate Highlight Series with Trisha Butler. And for folks looking forward to our program up here tonight with Max Goelker, make sure you've hit subscribe so you're not missing out. But to those folks, otherwise, it's Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show for Trisha Butler. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.